Shocking. CBC panel left stunned as NDP praises Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre has built a reputation for fiery exchanges, sharp critiques of government policy, and an unrelenting ability to dominate conversations around the kitchen table. But no one expected what unfolded recently on a national broadcast, when even an NDP strategist appeared on CBC and offered rare words of praise for him. In a country where partisan lines are usually drawn thick and reinforced daily, this unexpected acknowledgement sent shockwaves across the political spectrum. It wasn't simply about one comment. It was a symbolic moment showing just how much the political landscape in Canada is shifting under immense pressure. At the center of this political turbulence stands Prime Minister Mark Carney, who has faced a storm of challenges in his early months in office. He scrapped the federal consumer carbon tax almost immediately after the snap election, a decision that provided households with some relief at the pump and on their energy bills. But Carney now finds himself staring down two relentless forces: an economy that contracted by more than 1.5% in the second quarter, and U.S. tariffs hitting Canada harder than expected. Combined with stubborn inflation, job uncertainty, and supply chain bottlenecks, Canadians are questioning whether relief at the cash register is enough to offset broader financial instability. The situation is made worse by a relentless wildfire season that has scorched millions of hectares and forced thousands to flee their homes. Thick smoke has choked cities, emergency services have been stretched thin, and billions in property damage has mounted with no clear end in sight. Add to that widespread drought affecting nearly 3/4 of Canada's farmland, and the picture of national crisis comes into sharper focus. Families are worrying about food prices climbing again, farmers are fighting to save their crops, and rural communities feel left behind as government resources pour into containing fires and repairing damage. Carney has tried to present a long-term vision that matches the urgency of the moment. His proposed One Canadian Economy Act is pitched as a way to break down barriers to resource development, streamline infrastructure approval processes, and bring Indigenous communities into the fold as full partners in Canada's growth. The rhetoric is ambitious, blending language of discipline with promises of new investments. Yet the balancing act is daunting. His October budget must cut spending after years of bloated growth, while still convincing Canadians that he is the man who can deliver prosperity and unity. That balancing act is not just fiscal, it's political. Carney is a former central banker, a man used to operating in boardrooms and behind closed doors, now thrust into the raw arena of daily politics. Managing a caucus of nearly 200 MPs from across Canada requires more than financial expertise. It requires an ability to read people, broker compromises, and hold together a party under stress. Already, cracks are showing. Controversy around the Liberals' uneven response to anti-Semitism, combined with discontent over cabinet appointments, has raised questions about whether his team is as united as his carefully chosen words suggest. Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre has been carving out a different image, one that plays to his greatest political strength: anticipation. On that CBC panel, commentators noted that Poilievre seems to possess a kind of political radar, a knack for identifying the next issue that will dominate Canadian living rooms and then making it his cause before anyone else. He did it with inflation, hammering away at the cost of living crisis long before it became headline news, and Canadians rewarded him with a surge of support that put him on the path to becoming the most formidable opposition leader in years. The challenge now is whether Poilievre can repeat that trick. Rising violent crime in rural areas, concerns about public safety, and the sense of communities being abandoned by an overwhelmed justice system could be the next wave. Or perhaps it will be the growing strain on mental health services, with Canadians increasingly reporting burnout, anxiety, and despair. Poilievre's allies argue that if he can tap into one of these undercurrents and offer a coherent narrative that connects policy with hope, he could seize momentum again in a way that not even his critics can deny. The daily realities Canadians face are not abstractions. Mortgage payments are climbing for millions, grocery bills continue to bite, and entire generations feel their prospects are dimmer than those of their parents. Younger adults increasingly say they are worse off than their families were at the same age, while older generations watch anxiously as their children struggle with the basics of housing and stability. Political slogans mean little when rent is due, and this is the environment in which Poilievre's sharp soundbites and Carney's cautious policies are being tested against real life. Healthcare is another front where these tensions play out. Hospitals are straining under record emergency room wait times. Nurses are burning out, and patients often feel abandoned in the gaps between provincial and federal responsibility. Carney's government struck massive deals with the provinces to deliver funding and promises of reform, and it rolled out a new national dental care program already serving over 1 million Canadians. But the sense among many voters is that money alone does not heal broken systems, and confidence in the government's ability to deliver true change remains fragile. Beyond economics and healthcare, cultural battles are also erupting. In Alberta, efforts to restrict certain books from public libraries, including classic works like 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale, ignited a storm of protest. The provincial government was forced to back down after widespread backlash, pledging to refine its approach rather than enforce outright bans. Yet the episode highlighted the growing cultural rifts in Canadian society. Debates about parental rights, free expression, and the role of education are intensifying, adding yet another layer of complexity to the national debate. All of this frames the contrast at the heart of Canadian politics today. On one side is Mark Carney, presenting himself as a serious statesman with a plan to rebuild the economy and guide the country through crisis, but facing questions about whether his party discipline and technocratic background can meet the moment. On the other is Pierre Poilievre, a sharp-tongued populist whose critics often dismiss his rhetoric, but whose instincts continue to put him ahead of the curve. The fact that an NDP strategist publicly acknowledged his political gift shows how disruptive his presence has become. In conclusion, Canada faces more than partisan sparring. It's a test of leadership and vision. Citizens want a leader who can both diagnose problems and inspire confidence. Pierre Poilievre's rise, Mark Carney's struggles, and growing uncertainty put the nation at a crossroads. The next months will show if Canadians choose steady management or bold opposition, but one thing is clear: politics is shifting, and the country feels the tremors.